Okay, welcome everybody to day 10, the final day of the 10-day Living Yoga Challenge. I can't believe we're already at the last day. It seemed to go by really quickly. A lot of times when I think about challenges that are anything longer than a week, I tend to get a little like, I don't know if I can hang in there that long. But this one, I don't know your experience, but for me, it really felt like it flew by. So I'm just so grateful to have had you guys along with me on this journey, this exploration, and this reconnection to the grounding elements of a yoga practice, the first and second limbs of Patanjali's eightfold yogic path. Today, this video, we're going to talk about the fifth and final Niyama, which is called Isvara Pranidhana. So oftentimes this concept, Isvara Pranidhana, can be translated as surrendering to the divine. And I think when we try to think about that in a logical sense, it seems simple. We're like, oh yeah, I get what that means. But I have found it's very much harder to put this one into practice versus just thinking about it. So I want to talk about a few different ways that we can think about approaching this off of our mats. The first of which is the idea of if you're going to be surrendering to the divine, something greater than yourself, the very first thing that you're going to have to do is work on surrendering control in all areas of life. So really coming to a deep understanding of the fact that, we have no control over all the external situations and circumstances that go on in our lives. Really, truly, when you boil it down, the only thing we have control over is how we choose to respond, both internally and externally, to stimuli that come our way throughout life. So to really get into this practice, I would suggest that, anytime you start to feel anxious about the outcome of something, anytime you start to feel worried or revved up or nervous, you feel yourself wanting to try to, kind of manipulate the pieces on the chessboard, so to speak. That's kind of the analogy I think of when I think of like someone who wants to have too much control over a situation. I'm going to ask you to try to pause in those moments if you can notice yourself doing it. Noticing is the first step to changing any type of behavior or reaction. And I want to invite you in those moments to come back to a mantra or a positive affirmation, something that's going to help you feel more comfortable with relinquishing a little bit of control. So a mantra that I like to use is, life will unfold as it needs to for my highest good. And I love that mantra because I think it doesn't give false hope. It doesn't guarantee to me like, oh, everything in your life is going to be love and light. Everything's positive. Everything's great. No, some things in life are really shitty. But I think what it helps to remind me is it's okay to surrender my control over things, my illusion of control, I should say, because life really is unfolding in the ways that it needs to for me, for my highest growth and evolution. So that's one example. Second example kind of goes hand in hand with surrendering control, but also kind of surrendering this idea of the ego. We're all here in physical bodies having a human experience, and part of what goes along with being human is having an ego. And there's nothing wrong with that. The ego part of self isn't bad. It's just sometimes it can get a little warped based on our experiences and connections to thoughts and feelings and all those things. So I think how I see this one playing out for myself and in my observations in the world is, when the ego takes over is really when we feel that need to win, to beat someone, to get back at someone for something, and these are all really natural urges that we've probably all experienced at some time or another. But it's kind of like this idea that, if someone wounds us, then we immediately want to wound them. If someone makes us feel silly in some way, we want to one-up that person, show that we're better than them. If someone does something to hurt us, then we're going to hold a grudge and we're going to, talk bad about them to other people, etc. Again, these are just overly simplified examples, but maybe you can connect with some of those ideas, or maybe you can recognize times in your life when you have felt the need or the want to react in those types of ways. So, all I can say for this one is that just try to notice those egoic impulses when they come up. Like, I want to hurt that person. I want to beat them. I want to make them feel stupid. I want to, X, Y, Z, whatever it is for you. But just noticing that impulse, and then in that moment, taking a few deep breaths and trying to let that go. Notice the impulse. Thank the ego for being there to help you survive and persevere, and try to let that go. Try not to let your actions come from that place, but instead from a place of calm, of wider perspective, of remembering that we are surrendering ourselves to something greater. A third example is just trying to be mindful that there is something greater in all things around us. So taking a look at how do your actions on a day-to-day basis serve a purpose greater than yourself. Thinking about whether your actions are just solely based on gratifying your desires and your whims and your wants. And it's okay to make sure that you get all the things that you need. And in addition, can you ensure that some of the actions that you take throughout the day are in service to something greater than? I think also thinking about how we approach those kind of mundane, boring, unglamorous tasks that we have to do throughout the day. So that can be a project at work that you don't really like. That can be, if it's for me, doing the dishes, because I hate doing the dishes. So it's like, can we approach those tasks with a sense of reverence, knowing that even in those small moments that we are taking out the trash, that we're sweeping the garage, that we're cleaning our space, there is something greater in everything around us and in all of our actions. So just kind of surrendering all of that once again to this concept of the divine, or of, the collective, or however you might call it. And then lastly, I think, of course, this challenge has been all about how can we engage in these yogic practices outside of the time that we spend doing, physical yoga or meditation or whatnot. And at the same time, I think this niyama in particular, Isvara, Pranidhana, can be really well understood when we engage in meditation, restorative yoga, yin yoga, all of those somewhat physical practices, yoga nidra, practices that require us to surrender ourselves completely, body, mind, and emotions, to the present moment. And, especially in the case of like restorative yoga, literally just you're relaxing so deeply that you're opening yourself up in a greater way that we can't really accomplish throughout the rest of our day when we're busy and thinking and moving and doing things. So I think those are also great ways to live this concept of surrendering to something greater than yourself throughout your days and weeks. And to that end, today's Live Your Yoga, well, it's technically on the mat challenge, is to join me this evening for a live restorative yoga class through Zoom. This class is going to be held at 7:30 p.m. Central Time, so that's 6:30 Denver, 5:30 West Coast, 8:30 p.m. East Coast. Those are all the start times. It's going to be 60 minutes long. In today's email, I've outlined the different props that I'm going to ask you to bring to engage in this class. I put a link for a Spotify playlist that we'll be using, and I put the Zoom link and Zoom instructions in today's email as well. So if you have any questions, please do reach out to me, but I'm really looking forward to seeing you guys this evening. I hope you have a great day in the meantime, and I'll check in with you later.